Hey everyone, welcome to another News from the Front. Today is Saturday the 2nd of April and we're going to talk about the Model 3. But to do that, we're going to talk about the Model S because I don't have a Model 3 in my driveway. So what we'll do is we'll kind of work from the front to the back and talk about some of the key things that we saw at the reveal on Thursday night. What I liked, what I didn't, and I have to say as an opener, I liked pretty much everything. Stunning. But we'll talk about some of the things that Tesla has done with the car and see how we get on. This, by the way, is not my Model S. My Model S is up at the West Palm Beach Service Center. Nothing is broken, but we had a huge flood here the other night. We got about 12 inches of rain in less than an hour, and I was out driving and had water up to the top of the nose. And although there was no damage to the car, I did get some debris washed into the front of it. So it's up at the service center. They're taking the interior of the frunk apart so they can vacuum all that out and get it nice and clean and put it back to normal. So this is a loaner. So let us compare this to Model 3. I loved the look of the Model 3. Let's get that out of the way first. Stunning. And what I'm going to do throughout this video is I'm going to show shots of the Model 3 from the event, both the official video that Tesla produced, but also some shots that people at the event took as well. So I loved it. It looks enough like the Model S, which I absolutely love. It absolutely has the Model X nose. So gone is the black front, complete body color front now, just like the Model X. I think slightly more aggressive lines than the Model S, which I actually like. Whereas a lot of people have said the Model S kind of has a Maserati front end and a Jaguar back end. I think the new Model 3 front end is very reminiscent of the new Jaguar sports cars, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because they're a gorgeous car in of themselves. Essentially a identical platform in terms of its structure and architecture to the Model S. So same battery down at the bottom of the car. And for those that aren't familiar, I assume most people who watch this video are very familiar with the Model S. But the battery takes kind of the bottom 4 inches of the body here, bolted directly to the bottom of the car. Same for Model 3, mounted in the floor pan of the car. Like the Model S, both rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive versions. Now, I think all the cars that were at the event, I wasn't there, so I'm not sure, but I think all the cars at the event were all-wheel drive versions, and we'll talk about what that means for the frunk at the moment. So what Tesla said is the Model 3 is about 20% smaller than Model S. Let's get a few of the statistics out of the way first. So Model S is, depending on which model you get, 250 to 285 miles of EPA rated range. They said the Model 3 will be at least 215 miles of EPA range, but there will be bigger batteries. Now, the cars that were at the event had bigger batteries, or so the Tesla folks who were driving the cars said, but they didn't say how big they were. And Elon didn't say how big the battery was in the Model 3. Ultimately, does it matter? I mean, it's 215 miles of range plus. In terms of performance, no mention of top speed, but theoretically no reason why they couldn't get 155 out of the thing. But in terms of 0 to 60, that is, the Model S is roughly low 5s down to high 2s. The Model 3 said it was sub 6 second. Now, they didn't say how far sub 6 second, and they didn't say quite how quick it could be. They did talk about multiple versions, so we are going to see a rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. I assume that we are going to see performance versions. So I'll throw up a few shots now of the Model 3, the different ones they had on stage. Clearly there were some differences in what they had. Completely new wheel design. So on the Model S, we've got 21s and 19s. There was no indication about what size the wheels were. On the Model 3, on the Model X, we've got 20s and 22s. But the wheel designs are very similar between the Model S and the Model X. And the Model 3, completely new wheel designs, again, gorgeous. They showed 3 colors. They showed what appeared to be a multicoat red that had some candy in it, which looked gorgeous. And everybody who was at the event said the cars look much better in the flesh than they do in the pictures. And I think in the pictures they look absolutely gorgeous. So they had the red, the candy red. They had a silver, and they had what appeared on the video to be a matte car. Now, whether that is just something that they're doing for the demos or whether that's going to be an option, who knows? Very aggressive looking, really nice sporty car. So we don't know what colors are going to be available, but certainly the ones that were there in all 3 colors, they looked absolutely fantastic. So we've talked about 0 to 60, we've talked about range. What else can we talk about? Generally about the car, 5-seater, although whereas the Model S is really very much a full 5-seater, 5 adults, the Model 3, with it being that little bit smaller, is a 5-seater, but maybe the center seat in the back isn't quite as big as the Model S. How could it be? What they did say is that they have moved the firewall, although there isn't a firewall in these cars. The firewall is there to protect if there's a fire in the engine, it stops the ingress into the cabin. Well, there's no engine to have a fire in, so you don't have a firewall, but there is still a partition between the cabin and the front. The firewall has been moved forward, which makes the cabin that much bigger. And again, folks who were at the show said 6-foot tall people sat in the back had 7 inches of extra leg room to the front of the driver. So lots and lots of space inside. The wheels are very much at the corners of the car, and with the low battery, that's going to give it fantastic handling. And the other big thing, I suppose, to say about the outside of the car is complete glass roof. So from the rear of the hood all the way across the roof, all the way right down to the trunk is glass with a roll bar in the center. And I think, if I remember correctly, unlike the Model X, there is a roll bar at the top of the A-pillar. What that does is gives it fantastic headroom, particularly in the back, and gives it that fantastic view, makes it feel really open. So that's about it for the outside. So let's talk about the trunk. The trunk in the Model S, as we've seen, is huge, absolutely huge. And in fact, with the rear seats folded, the trunk in the Model S is actually bigger than the Model X in terms of length. The one thing that I did not like about the Model 3, and apologies for any wind noise, it is super windy out here today, even though it is very warm. The one thing I did not like is the thing that Jalopnik said in their story, which is it has this tiny, tiny, weird trunk opening. So whereas the Model S and the Model X have the hatchback, the Model 3, as displayed, has a tiny, tiny trunk opening, which is going to make it much less practical than the Model S. Now, at this point, probably something I should have said earlier. Elon has said and tweeted out that what we saw was step 1. The cars that were on display were step 1 of a 2-part plan for Model 3. Clearly there are going to be some changes from what we saw to what is coming out. Now, whether that means there's going to be a different variant, those were cars, 4-door cars with trunks. Maybe there's going to be a 2-door hatch version. Who knows? We're going to have to wait and see. But certainly in the iterations that they showed, that tiny trunk is not great. So here's a clip. There's a guy called Doug who runs the Tesla Motors Club website. And he was at the event, got to ride in the car, and asked Tesla to open up the trunk at the back. And essentially, as you can see from the video, the rear trunk hinges here, but whereas there is the glass completely lifts up with Model S, in the Model 3 the glass stays where it is, and you get really just the rear part lifting up. So comments down below if you think that's a good or a bad thing. Moving forward now to the frunk. Again, I think all the cars there were all-wheel drive cars, and so unlike my car, which is the rear-wheel drive car and therefore has a huge frunk along with what they call the microwave space, which is this extra amount of space at the front, which just makes the frunk unbelievably huge. In the Model S, all-wheel drive cars, you've got a smaller frunk. The Model X, it's slightly larger. Well, in Model 3, here's a shot that was taken at the event showing the Model 3 frunk. Not quite as big as Model X or Model S, but still pretty sizable. Be interesting to see what that's like with the rear-wheel drive cars. A couple of other things we haven't talked about yet on the exterior. One was the door handles. They are flush to the car, and unlike the Model S, they don't come out, so somewhat similar to the Model X. There did appear to be two different designs on the cars that were there, so whether that's just Tesla testing things out, nobody knows. Also, the cars had wing mirrors. Some of you may know that at some point the Model X prototype had cameras instead of wing mirrors. Currently, regulations, at least in the US, don't allow cameras. Cars have to have rear view wing mirrors, and the Model 3 currently has those as well, although I'm led to believe that Tesla was lobbying and may still be lobbying the US government to allow cameras to the outside. So I think that's it for the exterior. Absolutely gorgeous, love it. Interesting to see what they do with that hatch versus the trunk at the back. So let's talk about the interior. All right, let's talk about the interior, and we'll take a quick aside, because I don't know whether this is visible on the screen or not, but this is the Tesla Model 3 website, and unfortunately it doesn't render properly on the Tesla browser in the Model S. Tesla, you need to get that fixed. So let's talk about the interior of Model 3 versus Model S. Biggest difference is obviously the control screen. So Model S, we have a 17-inch vertical touchscreen, and we also have the instrument panel here in front of us, also an LCD screen. Model 3, just one, mounted in the center horizontally, 15-inch screen. So no instrument panel at all. And although kind of like the Model X prototype, the 15-inch display is on a little binnacle and just it kind of looks like it's just been bolted on as an afterthought. It may be that in the final production version that's more integrated. But Tesla, the guys who were giving the test drives, said there are no plans to include an instrument panel. There will only be one display, and it will be the 15-inch display in the center. What that allowed them to do was to lower this part of the car, which gives you much increased visibility, lengthens the windshield, I think lets everything also sit a little bit further forward as well, as we talked about before. Makes it incredibly clean. Again, like the Model S, no physical buttons. You've just got a couple of stalks on the wheel, and that's it. The 15-inch display did seem to be running a completely different version of the software with different graphics. It was showing a map on one side and then audio controls on the other. The argument that Tesla put forward was that they wanted to position the screen in such a way that both the driver and the passenger would have equal access to it. They also said that things like the speed will now be displayed in part of the main 15-inch display, and it was shown up in the top left-hand corner. Now then, they said that was kind of the production version of the dash. Are we gonna see a head-up display? It wouldn't surprise me. It seems strange that Tesla would have the speed of the car as only available kind of in your peripheral vision, or having to look away from where you are driving in order to see the speed of the vehicle. Now, arguably that layout has been designed because they expect that by the time the car ships in 2 years' time, a lot of the driving is going to be autopilot, and we'll come on and talk about autopilot in a moment. Theoretically, if the car is driving itself, or certainly is on autopilot, then you don't need to be looking at the display all the time. But I still think there is going to be a lot of hands-on driving of the car. So I say whether they're going to do a HUD, we will have to wait and see. That might be part 2 of the reveal. So let's talk about autopilot. The other thing Elon said, or one of the other things that Elon said, was that all the cars will be autopilot enabled. They will all ship standard with the safety features, so things like automatic emergency braking and anti-collision warning and lane collision warning. That will all be standard on the Model 3. Just like the Model S and the Model X, autopilot will be, the hardware will be installed, but it will be optional whether you turn that on or not. The other big surprise, for me at least, was that all the Model 3s are supercharger enabled. Lots of debate about whether that was going to be the case or not. And now that Elon has confirmed that they're all supercharger enabled, the big question is, for those of you that have seen the superchargers in California that are already super busy, and we've got 50,000 Model S and Model X on the road, what the heck's it going to be like when there's 1 million Model 3s on the road? So talking of supercharging, Elon talked about the growth in superchargers. Today there are something like 3,600 superchargers. Elon said by the end of 2017, so by the end of next year, they're going to double that number, 7,200 superchargers. He also talked about destination chargers. So these are the high power wall connectors that are installed at hotels and restaurants. And in fact, any hotel or restaurant, as long as they are prepared to make that prominently available, can actually get a high power wall connector, those destination chargers, for free, as long as they pay for the installation. So today there are something like just under 3,700. Elon said by the end of 2017 there are going to be 15,000 destination chargers. He was also talking about the number of stores. Today, 215 stores. Again, by the end of 2017, they're targeting 441. So by the end of 2017, more than doubling the number of stores. So a few other things to talk about for Model 3. We've got to talk about orders. So the stores opened up at 10 a.m. local time on Thursday morning. By the time of the event, so that would have been roughly 24 hours in terms of how long since the Australia stores opened. It had been 8 hours, 10 hours since the West Coast US stores had opened. So within those few hours, Elon announced at the event they'd had 115,000 orders for Model 3. Since then, he's been giving updates on Twitter this morning, so Saturday morning. So we are now 36 hours after the event, a couple of days after the stores opened. There are now over 230,000 orders. So nearly $1 billion. Elon is suggesting the average selling price of a Model 3 is going to be $42,000. So 42,000 times 230,000, $1 billion worth of orders in the first 48 hours. How crazy is that? $250 million worth of deposits for cars. Quite a lot of people put down more than one deposit. The maximum number that you could put down was 2. I put down an order. In fact, I put down orders for 2 cars. In a couple of years' time, I'm probably this Model S, or not this Model S because this is a loaner, but my Model S will be 5 years old. So at that point, I'll probably be looking to trade to a Model 3. My wife's car by then will be quite a bit older than that, so she'll probably go to Model 3 as well, so we may well be a 2 Model 3 household. So last but not least, let's talk about the price. $35,000 entry price. Elon is suggesting $42,000 average selling price. There's been speculation that there may be versions that go up to $60,000. So, almost double, similar as there is with the Model S. So going from the basic rear-wheel drive version, which Elon, again, as Elon does, I could believe him. He says there will not be a better car in the market. Anything, gas, hybrid, hydrogen, whatever. There will not be a better car in the market than the Model 3 at that price point. So that's the base level with no options, but then by the time you start adding options, you go to all-wheel drive. We assume there's going to be a performance version, maybe as much as $60,000. So that would still put it below Model S. Big speculation then about what happens for the Model S, because if you can get all the performance of the high-performance Model S for less than half the price, what does that do to the Model S? Are they going to revamp it in a couple of years' time and reposition it? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Some elements of the secret master plan are still secret. So that's it. Model 3. Quite a day, quite an event, quite a car. Now we've just got to wait. If you put an order down today for Model 3, so let's see, it's going to be launched end of 2017. So we think, they're going to ship a couple of thousand cars at the end of the year, as they just start initially building them. So then, currently they're building 100,000 Model S and Model X total a year. They're probably not going to build more than 100,000 of the Model 3 in the first year, so that puts you to the end of 2018. So there's already 230,000. So say they double production in 2019. So that would put you to the middle of 2019 already. So if you order a Model 3 today, you are probably looking at second half of 2019 before you take delivery. Don't want to put you off, just that's the reality of it. Now, Elon did tweet out that they are going to have to completely rethink their production plans based on demand. So I doubt they'll accelerate the starting point, but they may try and ramp up more quickly. We will have to wait and see. So that's it. Another news from the frunk is done. Hope you enjoyed it. If you got any feedback, post below. I'm sure there are some things about the Model 3 I forgot to mention. I'm sure you will point it out and correct me down below, and I'm sure we will be talking about it again in a future episode. But for the time being, thank you for watching.